Hi guys, welcome back to Delaware Studios. We are still on the employee directory application. Let's get to save our first employee, and we're going to use the cursor adapter to display the employee saved. Right there on Android Studio, I have the source, and I'll be continuing from where we actually stopped. And this time we're going to actually learn how to save data into an SQLite database. So I'll be able to say to the Java classes, right there in the employee editor, we're going to actually walk you down through some aspects of this application. We actually created some fields here, which stands for the first name, last name, title, department, city, phone, and email. Also, the gender. And this is coming with a spinner. So we have that declared. Those fields will be needed. We initialize the gender by calling the gender unknown, which is right there in the contract. We have that specified in the data, the contract, the employee entry, gender unknown. We have it here, which has an integer of 0. Back to our editor. We've actually covered this aspect in the previous tutorial where we talk about the circular review, where we bind the review layout and also the view group layout. We need to declare the untouched listener that listens for any user touches on a view, implying that they are modifying the view, and we change the employer as change boolean to true. The untouched listener, which override the boolean untouched. Now we need to pass this as true. The employer has changed, definitely. In the onCreate method, we're going to initialize the fields we created earlier by finding all relevant views that we need to read the user input from. The edit text for first name, last name. For the title, the department, you need to type in some values there. The city will get the ID of each of these view. And we have to set up the untouched listener on all the input fields so we can determine if the user has touched or modified them. This will let us know if there are unsaved changes or not. If the user tries to leave the editor without saving, we'll get to talk about that later on when you're trying to edit a particular employee. But presently, we set untouched listener to the edit text, the title, the first name, department, city, phone number, email, and gender. After that, we set up the spinner. We call a spinner method. Let's get to look at this method. This is actually setting up the drop-down spinner that allows the user to select the gender of the employee. Definitely, you need to select the gender, and the gender is either male, female, or unknown. No, that's specific. So we use the spinner to actually depict that. What about we create the adapter for spinner, and the list options are from the string arrays. It will use the spinner to actually call the default layout. We call the array the gender options. I have that array somewhere declared earlier. Let me quickly look at that. That will be in the values, the arrays XML. You can see the name, the array, gender options. Whereby you actually have first of all the unknown, the second male, while the third, based on the array is going to be 0, 1, 2, and that's female. Back to our editor. Let's get to look at how we specify the drop-down layout style, which is the simple list view. This is out of the box right there in Android. We just call the layout the simple drop-down. It's like a template, so you can use that, which we actually use for the spinner. Then we set the adapter to the gender spinner adapter that was created earlier from the array adapter. We have to set the integer, which is the selected, to the custom value of the spinner. We'll set the on item selected listener, because once you click on the spinner, you're going to have that drop down, and you will be able to select which of the gender applies to the particular employee you're trying to save. And if you're trying to save for male, we need to have a selected listener on that drop down. That's the essence of this. And you need to vary on item selected based on the adaptive view as the parent parameter. The second parameter is the view, the position of the item, and the ID, which is in the long date type. So we need to actually create a variable of string, and we get the item at the position, passing the position as a parameter. And now if the text utilities is empty, based on the selection, that if it's not empty rather, because we have this not sign here, and now you're going to test that if it's equals to male, you're actually going to save that to the mgender variable, and if it's equals to female, save all that to that it depends on the selected item based on the gender, and if it's unknown as well, it's going to save the value to the mgender. That's cool. Now, because the adapter is an abstract class, on nothing selected must be defined. Now, if nothing is selected, definitely the gender will be unknown. That's what that depicts. So after you might have locked in your values in the name, first name, last name, city, and so on, we need to trigger the save employee. And where will this method be called? This method is going to be called in the on options item selected, as at the top bar, whereby we have the check button, which is like the done button, or the icon rather. Then this triggers the save employee. Once you click on that, it's actually going to save the data of the employee. And we actually need to go through this. We first of all have some variables, whereby we have for the first name, the last name, the title, department, city, and phone, and email. These are all string variables. And we need to get the text. We convert the text we add to string, and we trim up based on the values from the edit text for each of the fields, for the first, last, title, department, city, phone, and email. So we pass them and save them to its appropriate variables. Afterwards, we need to create a content value object where column names are the keys and the employee attributes from the editor are the values in the key value pairs. Whereby we need to, the column is the key and the value will come from the string variable that was created up here. So for the first name now, we're passing the value right there to the column, and the same thing goes for the last name, the title, department, the city, the phone, and the email. Now we are passing them to its appropriate columns. After doing that, we need to call this for the gender. Cool. Now, this is a new employee, so we need to insert a new employee into the provider. Now we are using the provider. We're not just inserting straight to the database. Now we need to return the content URI of the new employee. That makes us call the getContentResolver, and we also trigger the insert method, which was declared from the provider. If you should remember, we have the insert method. Let's quickly look at that. The insert employee, which is here, we call this method, and this method definitely returns the helper method called insert employee. So it's triggered from the content provider. We are not querying the DB directly. You see the beauty of using your content provider back to the editor. And now we call the content URI now, not the tables, if you are inserted directly to the DB, and we're passing the values. Cool. I think that is well explicit enough. And we show a toast if there is an error or if it's successful. So that's just it. That ends our save. So with that, you can save the data into the database using the content provider. And the on options item selected will help us to trigger the save done check button, which we have it right there. And we also have for the delete, which we'll be talking about in previous tutorial. And if it's home, it's actually going to navigate us back to the home screen. So for us to actually see it populated, and for us to be able to do that, we'll need the help of a cursor adapter. And we'll be heading straight to the employee activity. They're actually going to show us the list of what we've saved from the cursor, from the employee editor. Let's get to look at our employee activity. Now we need to implement the loader manager, which calls the loader callback, and we pass the cursor as its generic parameter. Once you declare something of the loader manager of this nature, you have to implement three methods. You implement the onCreateLoader, and you also implement the onLoadFinished and the onLoaderReset. These three methods, which you can see right here, you have to implement them and you have to override them appropriately. Now, these are the three methods we'll be looking at, because we actually want to call data from the content provider, and we are going to use a loader to actually fetch that. Now, firstly, we need to define a projection right there in the onCreateLoader that specifies the column from the table we are about to select from. And we need all tables. That's why we declare it as a string array: the ID, the column, first name, last name, title, department, the city, phone, and email. These are the columns we are calling. Cool. This loader will execute the content provider's query method. You can see we are not triggering the query method right there on the database. We are using the content provider. We are interacting with the content provider method on a background thread to actually fetch us the data right there on the DB. That's cool. Now we call the CursorLoader, which actually use this, which is the parent activity context, the content URI, which is the provider content URI to query, and the projection is the columns to include in the resulting cursor, and we pass in three nulls. The first null is the selection clause, the second is the selection argument, while the third is the sort order. We're actually not creating a selection clause argument and a specific sort order. That's why we passed in null to the three parameters. On load finish, you are going to swap cursor and fix in the new cursor, with this new cursor containing updated data, and we call the cursor adapter. We're going to quickly look at the cursor adapter, which serves as a binder, which is going to bind those data to the view. That's the essence of the cursor adapter, which we'll be looking at shortly. On loader reset, we are going to swap cursor and pass null. This is a callback which is called when the data needs to be deleted. What about we need to pass null? This takes us down to the cursor adapter, which we actually instantiated here, we declared here, based on the adapter for the list view, the employee cursor adapter. We created an object called mCursor adapter. Let's get to look at that. The employee cursor adapter over here. This extends the cursor adapter. It's a class from the Android. It's a widget which actually helps us to bind data, basically cursor data, which is from the database. It helps us to bind to the view, to the appropriate view we are trying to show that on. So that's very cool and very, very useful. We created a constructor, which is the employee cursor adapter, and now we pass in the context, which is like this class, and the cursor itself. We need to override the onView method, which is a new view that takes three parameters: the context, the cursor, and the view group, which is the parent. And now we need to inflate the layout that we are trying to display this on. So that's the essence of this, which we are about doing now. Cool. We need to inflate the layout list item. We can quickly look at the list item one more time, which houses the first name, the last name, and the title of the employee. So that's the details of the list item. Back to the cursor adapter, and we're going to look at the bind view. This method binds the employee data in the current row pointed to by the cursor to the given list item layout. For example, if the name of the current employee can be set on the name text view in the list item layout. Is that making sense? It's actually going to bind the value from the cursor to the layout which was declared earlier. That's fine. And now we're going to look at this bind view. It's so easy using the cursor adapter. It takes the view, the context, and the cursor as the parameters. Now it's going to find individual views that we want to modify in the list item layout. We want to modify the first name, the last name, and the title, just like what I mentioned from the list item. And you call its appropriate IDs. Now we need to find the columns of the employee attributes that we are interested in, which is the first name column index, the last name column index, and the title column index. How are we going to get that? We call the cursor. We get the column index based on the column name. Can you see how we got that? The same thing goes for the second and the third. Afterwards, we read the employee attributes from the cursor for the current employee, which is now for the first name. Now we get the string from the first name column index, the same thing for the last name column index, and for the title column index, we pass it to a variable called employee first name, employee last name, and employee title, all in string data type. Cool. Now, if the employee first name is empty string or null, then use some default text that says like unknown. So the text view isn't blank. That's why we call for the employee first name unknown and the title unknown. Now let's bind the values. We're going to update the text view with the attribute for the current employee, which is the first name text view, which we created earlier, which is the view from the ID of the list item. And we set the text and pass the employee first name here. This one over here. The same thing goes for the last name. The same thing goes for the title. And that says it all. You can see just with two methods, the new view and the bind view, we can easily get our cursor adapter working. And we can bind data from the database to our list item. Superb. That's cool. From that, we're going to get the list populated, and our content provider has been solidly created, so we don't need to go back and forth to our to our content provider rather. So that's going to help us in the course of this tutorial. Even when we need to update a particular employee, when we are going to delete a particular employee, or when we are deleting all employees, those are the three basic aspects that we'll be looking at, because this actually the read aspect we've been able to create, and now we are reading. We should be able to update, and we should be able to delete. So we'll get to cover the two aspects remaining, the update and delete, in the subsequent session of this magnificent application. So that's NCT. I'll be showing you the screencast of what we've done, and so that we'll be able to understand how the extent that we've got to in this application. So I will implore you to stick by, don't go anywhere. We still have one or two other modules to wrap up with the employee activity and with the employee directory application. So thank you guys for hanging out with me throughout this tutorial, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and stay by. Leave a comment if you're finding it clumsy, if you're finding it hard to understand. I'll be there to respond to all your queries. Thank you guys one more time. Have a pleasant time. Bye bye.